Welcome to part 3 of the Chapter 33 Flipped Classroom. In this section, we are going to shift our focus to Asia. So we're going to be taking a look at these different parts of Asia, and we're going to spend some time looking at India and the expansion of the British, Russia's attempt at expansion, briefly look at the French and the Dutch, and then Japanese and American expansion. In Oceania, much of the same thing was happening. You can see Australia was controlled by the British. These islands, many of them were used to produce sugar, and there was a massive die-off of persons because of imperialism at this time. So, in Asia, colonies started with indirect control. India fell under British control in the 1700s and became the jewel of the crown. It was first originally controlled by the British East India Company, similar to how the Dutch East India Company controlled Indonesia. The Dutch there originally were looking at spices, and they continued to grow spices, but also started to control the rubber trade there, which is where rubber was originally from. It was imported into Africa. They used incredibly brutal slavery and crackdowns in their direct control of this area after the Dutch East India Company. Back to India. India produced some very important things for the British, such as raw cotton and also opium, which allowed them to, which was their main export good to the Chinese, which we got a little sense of with the Opium Wars. After the Sepoy Rebellion in 1857, the Sepoys are the soldiers of the British, or who stood for the British, who were Indian in descent. After that rebellion in 1857, British took direct control over India. And that signaled a transformation in the relationship between the Indians and the British. Atrocities such as the Cawnpore massacre or British practice of blowing up mutineers with cannons meant that any illusion of mutual respect or tolerance was clearly gone. India was now a nation of rulers and ruled. While the British had complete control of South Asia, the competition between these states was, or between British states and other European states was the rule everywhere else. As part of this thing called the Great Game, Russia wanted to control basically Central/South Asia, but they lost to the British and lost control of Pakistan and Afghanistan. The British also expanded control into Burma and the Malay Peninsula, which gave them a wayfaring spot between China and India. The French controlled most of Indochina, with Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, and independent states such as Siam grew up on the edges of those empires. From 1750 to 1900, Europeans increased their share of manufacturing output with these raw materials from 23 to 63% of the world's industrial capacity, or world's manufacturing output. India plummeted from 34 to 1.7% of industrial output, showing just how much they were losing to the British in terms of industrial capacity. And China plummeted from 32.8% to 6.2%. Here you can see a British home in Calcutta, which is what Calco is named after. These are British colonial soldiers, and this is a sepoy. And now we're going to look at American imperialism. The Monroe Doctrine established the idea that the Americans should maintain control or influence, let's say, in Latin America. Alaska was purchased in 1867. It was known as Seward's Folly, but soon afterwards it turned out they had oil, so nice job. And Hawaii became a state in 1898. You might remember the tension and horrible way that Liliuokalani was imprisoned by the sugar planters before Hawaii became a state of of part of the United States. Hawaii is also very interesting because not only was it a place of strategic importance, but it also had tons of sugar plantations. And many of those sugar workers actually came from other areas like Japan. In the Spanish-American War, sparked partially by yellow journalism, the United States gained partial control of part of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. The Philippines thought that they were going to be gaining independence from Spain. However, the United States had other plans for them, partially because of their strategic importance. And so Filipinos like Emilio Aguinaldo, he was one of the leaders, strove to gain independence from the United States, but they were not successful. The United States also supported the strategic importance of the Panama Canal. Um, they supported a rebellion of the Panamanians against their government, and that led to the United States controlling the canal zone, and that lasted for a very long time into the 20th century. The Japanese were also an imperialist power because of the Meiji Restoration. They mastered industrialization, militarism, and imperialism, like gunboat diplomacy. And through this, they were able to take up a whole bunch of islands in the South China Sea, which are now disputed again between Japan and China. And these islands were of strategic importance because of shipping. They also fought a war with Korea, which resulted in an unequal treaty in the Sino-Japanese, and they also fought in the Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, which they won. In the last part of the PowerPoint, we'll be getting into the legacies of imperialism.